Andrew has been developing and conducting training seminars for librarians and library organizations for a very long time. He has presented web-based, online, and face-to-face sessions on management and leadership, customer service and communication skills in the U.S. and numerous countries around the world and also on the oceans. Coming to you now from lovely Western North Carolina, Andrew Sanderbeck.
Thanks, Ann. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the topic of the day here. And this one is very relative to me because there have been many years where saying no was just something I didn't do. And it was a skill that I had to learn. And boy, was it tough at first. So I am assuming that you guys are with me today because this is a challenge for you as well. So I'm hoping today that I'll be able to give you some strategies for saying no, but better than that, saying no and meaning it. There are many ways that we can say no and people are like, yeah, whatever. So we need to talk about really being able to say no and meaning it. I do have a 3-step method for saying no that I'm going to share that I don't even remember where I learned it, but that really helped me some years ago in being able to confidently say no and to follow the 3 steps. Trust me, the idea isn't just to say no and run away. That's not effective in what we're doing. We'll have some specific verbiage from the session that you'll be able to use today and just some more tips on different situations and different things that may come our way where we will want to say no, even though we want to help and do different things like that. So how about this one over in the discussion area? When was the last time you said yes to something or someone when you really wanted to say no? When was the last time? Now, it's interesting. I presented this webinar for another group, a couple months back now. And I was really intrigued at a couple of things. One was how many people that came to the program, because I could see some hesitancy about, telling my boss I wanted to go to a webinar where I was learning to say no, but also the replies on this specifically for this question, and how many people said today, yesterday, and it was really quite interesting. Just how often this is happening and how this continues to be relative for our program today. So take a look at this one. In my research, I found this was really quite interesting. A story about John Galbraith. He is an economist. And the story here has to do with his housekeeper. And his housekeeper telling the President of the United States, no, I ain't waking him. Sorry, I work for Mr. Galbraith. I don't work for you. And hung up the phone. And I thought, wow, that's pretty powerful. Because sometimes we're afraid to say no to someone just because of their title or their position or whatever it may be. And yet, that didn't seem to be a problem for his housekeeper and what was going on. And I say good on her with that. So this one I think is pretty self-explanatory. If you're taking on too many commitments, then you know what? You're in trouble. And let me go over some of the relevance of this and see if you guys are kind of in the same boat as I was. And from time to time, I still open my mouth and I say yes, but I'm getting better. So here's what happened to me in the past. I like to help people. I enjoy helping people. And so someone will come to me and they'll say, hey, Andrew, can you help with this? And I will say yes. And I will say yes, even knowing that I'm already overwhelmed. I'll say yes, knowing that I've got way too much that I'm trying to handle already. And because I don't want to say no, I've just added more. And now, guess what's happening? Things aren't getting done. I'm feeling horrible because I'm not getting it done and feeling like I let people down. But here's the thing that's even the layer that's even worse. And the layer that was even worse was I was beating myself up. Man, was I beating myself up about how oh, great, you didn't get that done again. Da 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 da. All the negative self-talk just flying my way, going on and on. Is this similar for you? Give me a yes or a no in the discussion area if that is something that you can relate to. And I'm seeing some yeses and yeah. All right, you guys get it. And so what I'm doing is I'm destroying my own self-confidence. I'm destroying my own self-esteem. And, I really had to sit back and say, you know what, enough. Enough. I'm going to need to get comfortable saying no, even when it might be to my boss. And by the way, we're going to get into that. And certainly, I want to highlight here that the information I'm sharing is going to work for you outside of the workplace as well. You may have friends, you may have people at your church and other types of recreation that you're involved with who are going to ask you to do things, and it might be time for you to step up and say, you know what? No. And to take it from there. Share a little bit of research with you from the University of California at San Francisco. When it comes to the workplace, it shows that the more difficulty that you have in saying no, the more likely you are to experience stress, burnout, and even depression. And of course, those three things are really going to be hindrances to our emotional intelligence and our relationship building and doing things like that. So saying no is indeed a major challenge for many people, and anyone that suffers from that stress that comes from overcommitment, I think is going to hopefully get some help today in some of the strategies that we're going to talk about with our ever increasing workload and people asking us to help. So I kind of call this the gentle art of saying no. And I recognize that requests for all of our time is coming in through the phone, through email, through in person. And, as the study indicated, this is a skill to learn, and certainly there are times where it's hard to say no. So I focus here on relationships when I look at this. To me, relationships are super important. And so if I'm going to tell someone no, then I really look at what's the impact of saying no to that relationship. So if I am to say no to a coworker, what's the impact? If I am going to say no to a boss, okay, what's the impact here? I'm certainly going to keep that in mind. And yes, you know what? I understand that it may anger them, it may disappoint them, and yet I also understand that I also need to stand up for myself here whenever I deem that it's a good decision to do that. Relationships, though, to me are critical, and that's certainly going to be a factor that I look at when I am going to make the decision to say yes or no in a given situation. And as I noted here, I am concerned about what that working relationship would look like in the future. I don't want to jeopardize it. I also need to find a balance for myself in what's going on here. I am going to suggest that experience has taught me that saying no doesn't have to be difficult or even hard on relationships. And I am a big fan of Brian Tracy. And what really Brian Tracy is saying there is that we need to look at our current thinking about saying no. And we need to look at the baggage that comes along with it. That's for real in what's going on here. So maybe today I can help you to look at these situations a little differently. And in doing so, maybe you can change your thinking. To me, starting point is everything here. And boy, this was so important when I first really learned this and really started to look at it. This would be one of those aha moments. And it's simply this: If I am saying yes to something, then I'm saying no to something else. And it's interesting because this sounds so simple, yet I think there are some layers to it. So if I am being asked to take on a project, if I am being asked to take on a task, then I want to make sure that I understand that in saying yes, what am I saying no to? Am I saying no to things on my to-do list that I was supposed to get done today? Am I saying no to lunch? Am I saying no to a break? And I think some of you are like, what's a break? Well, those are all things that I need to consider here in this process. So, what are you saying no to if you say yes? That to me kind of builds the foundation where I want to take you. So let's look at some different strategies here. You're approached by someone and they want you to take on a task, a duty, be involved in something. And, well, what if you're having doubts already? As soon as they're talking with you about this, they're explaining to you, and you're like, oh boy, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. I love this strategy, and that is to say, can you give me a day to think about it, or can I let you know tomorrow? In the past, I would have been afraid to say this. And now I have a lot less fear. There's two reasons I want to say this. So I'll let you know tomorrow. Can I have time to think about it? Great verbiage to use. My two reasons are, number one, it will give me time to think about it. It will really give me time to look at this and say, is this really something that I could take on or should take on? But number two might even be as important. And number two is, by asking for more time, the response that I get back from the person asking me to take on the task is going to tell me a lot. If their response is, yeah, that's fine, okay, good, then I have an idea of urgency versus, well, I really need to know, in the next hour. I need to know in the next 20 minutes. I'm putting things together, da-da-da-da-da. Okay, good. I have a better gauge now for the level of urgency and importance from the person that's asking. Now, they may not be able to give me a sleep on it. They may say, well, I can't give you till tomorrow. All right, good. Then I know I at least know the boundaries and I know what I'm working with here. I think a lot of times I found that people are more than likely to say, yeah, take some time to think about it. And let me give you the 3 steps that was taught to me and I just find to be gold. So step number 1 is to say no. Step number 2 is to say the reasons why. So let's say that someone came to me and a coworker or a boss came to me and asked me if I would be able to do this. And truly knowing my schedule and truly knowing everything I'm handling, I would then say to that person, I'm going to have to decline. The reasons are this, which is number 2. And number 3 is to give them alternatives if possible. So no, I am not able to take on that task. I have all of this going on. I have these deadlines, da-da-da-da-da. However, did you consider either another person or another resource that may help you to achieve that? So those are the 3 steps. Those are things that I would use if indeed that maybe I didn't have the time to sleep on it. What if I asked, hey, can I let you know tomorrow? And they say, no, I need to know right now. Well, based on that moment, then I'm going to have to go with no, and here's why. And have you considered maybe these alternatives? Or do you want to talk about what other resources may be available for you? That's another strategy that's out there. And in management, I was never a big fan of the sandwich method. Some of you guys may know that way of giving feedback. The idea here is to sandwich the no between 2 yeses so that perhaps the no might be a little more palatable for the person. It could be a great way to explain that to which you are already committed. For example, let's say that your boss asks you to work on the weekend, but you have family commitments. You could explain that you have these commitments going on to your boss. That's the first yes, how it would prevent you from coming in on the weekend, and then finish by confirming your commitment to the organization to get that work done. Probably not my favorite method, but once again, you need to find what strategies work for you, because our styles are different. How we handle situations are going to be different. And please don't do anything just because I tell you that I think it's a great strategy. That's like close to crazy. This is for you to figure out what works for you, and then looking at some of these strategies that you, and trust me, you have to not only feel comfortable, but you need to be really feel confident when you are saying no and what's going on. Preempting is another strategy. You can do this if you know ahead of time what request might be coming your way. So maybe perhaps you're sitting in a meeting and you've kind of got word that they're going to be asking people to take on this project or this task. Well, you could preempt that by saying something like, hey, everybody, just want to let you know that that my week is just booked full with urgent projects, and I'm probably not going to be able to take anything else on. Hey, will that work? Maybe, but at least you have put out a preemptive, and maybe that might help the person who's thinking about asking you to take on another task. That may give them a moment to pause and think maybe about asking someone else. Maybe later is another interesting technique to use here. This would be an option that says, that you'd like to keep the project or the task in mind instead of just saying no. It may be better to say, that sounds like, if it truly is an interesting opportunity, I may not have time right now to do that. Perhaps you could check back with me tomorrow, next week, something like that. So maybe later is kind of a soft no that does leave it open. And once again, by doing that, I may find out that this could wait for a week for them to do it. Or they may say, well, it's really something that we need to knock out here in the next couple of days. So consider this one. I'm not available now, but I may be available later. That one may be comfortable for your boss, in working with your boss. I also like the it's not you, it's me. I think a lot of times we think of this as like the classic dating line. Yet I do think that it can work in some of our workplace situations as well. Sincerity here, of course, is everything. So if you're approached and someone approaches you about a project or something that they have going on, and you just know that you don't have the skill set, you don't have the expertise, maybe not even the time to do it, then you can simply, compliment the idea, compliment the project, and the good that it would do, and just simply state, I just don't think this is going to be a good fit for me. And in turn, that won't be good for you. Or you could say something along the lines of, maybe it's not something you're looking for at this time. Once again, only say this if it's true, and know that people can really find when we're being sincere versus insincere and what's going on. There are a lot of times that I am being approached with different things, and I just know it's not a good fit. Now, they still may want me to do it, even if I tell them it's not a good fit. And, then we're going to have to work with that. But instead of initially just saying yes and taking on something else, especially something else you're not comfortable with, then look at this as another possible strategy that you could use to get you through the process. So when I gave you the 3 steps, and once again, let me go over those. Step number 1 is to say no. Step number 2 is to give the reason why. And step number 3 is to offer an alternative. And I found that this works really, really well. So as I've noted there, I don't want you to be seen as uncooperative. I don't want you to be seen as, a naysayer or whatever perceptions people may have about you if and when you start saying no to these different things. Offering an alternative to me is a powerful tool that actually shows that you at least care enough not to just say no and say, well, I can't do it. Oh, well, I can't come this weekend. I'm busy, whatever. Those aren't relationship builders to me. But if you can offer some type of an alternative, then I think that can be a path to look at here. Like with most things in life, consider the consequences. I talk about good risks and bad risks, or good choices and bad choices. Well, depending who the person is that's asking you to do something, or let's say in my case, they're asking me to do something, then I need to weigh the consequences of the good choice or the bad choice. So even though I may be overwhelmed, maybe I may have a whole ton of stuff on my weekly schedule here, it may be a bad choice to say no. And I'm going to need to consider that when I consider the answer that I'm going to give someone. A story that I love to share that is not work related, yet I think you guys will relate to it, is that some years back, there was a church that we attended, and our Reverend Alan Robotham was this extremely charismatic, extremely powerful man that no one said no to. If Reverend Allen came to you and said, I think you're a good fit for this project and you should be the one that, should help the church, people just didn't say no. And I remember very fondly being called into his office and there was this project that he wanted me to talk about and so we have our conversation and very eloquently he is laying out everything and he is, telling me why I'm a good fit for this project and what it will do for the church and what it will do for the congregation and so on and so on and so on. And then he came to the point where he, in essence, assumed that I would say yes. It wasn't really an ask. It was more along the lines of, and so this is a project you'd really like to be a part of, right? And I think much to his surprise, my answer was no. And I said, Reverend Allen, I'm going to have to decline and let me tell you why. The project that you've laid out goes over a course of 3 months. During those 3 months, I will be traveling extensively. And because of that, I won't be able to meet the commitments that this project requires. In the end, what's going to happen is I'm going to let you down. I'm going to let the other members of the congregation down. And of course, coming with that will be me beating myself up about not fulfilling what we wanted done here. And I said, alternatively, you may want to consider, and there was another gentleman that was a part of our congregation that I knew. His name was Peter. And I said, you may want to consider Peter for this because I know Peter has the expertise. And I know that Peter right now actually is not working. And so this could be something that he may want to take on. Was it Reverend Allen disappointed? Sure, he was. Was he upset? No, I don't know. I don't know that I ever saw Reverend Allen get upset. But the truth was, he was not expecting no. Now, interestingly enough, for months after that, I had the reputation of being the only person that ever said no to Reverend Allen. Okay. It's not anything I want to, go out and get a t-shirt made for. But the truth was, that situation was not going to end well if I said yes. And I looked at the consequences of it. Would Reverend Allen think less of me? Maybe. As it turned out, I actually think he thought more of me because I was able to just stand up and say, I will let you down. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So at some point, I'd like you to look at saying no to a new commitment as a way of honoring yourself. It's a way of honoring the commitments that you have. And, here's something else that I took on probably 4 or 5 years ago. And when we talk about commitments, here's a big one that I made. I made the commitment that if I said yes to an idea, to a person, to a request, that if I said yes, then I was going at it 1,000,000%. 100%, I was saying yes, and it would get done. With that thought in mind, there were a lot of things that came my way that I knew that I could not give it that level of commitment. And because of that, it became a little easier to say no. Simply because I had made this commitment to myself on taking on different things. That if I took it on, I would complete it. Because another one of the things that I would do in the past is I would start something and it wouldn't get done. And then I would start something else and it wouldn't get done. And the emotional baggage that I was creating on myself was incredible. So here's a little bit on that John Galbraith story that I started with. So what do you think about that? President Johnson saying, you know, I want her working for me. Interesting. I do think that when we say no to people, that it actually does build some respect in the relationship. If people see you sticking up for yourself, I think it sends a message to them about yourself, about how you feel about yourself, and about the relationship. And once again, I go back to, if saying yes only means I'm going to let them down, then why would I say yes? If I can see the writing on the wall, and I can see what saying yes is going to do to me and it's going to do to them, then to me, I think it's just really appropriate to understand when it's time to say no and go from there. All right, we're talking about workplace stuff today, so specifically we need to look at saying no to the boss. Because the boss is going to come in and they're going to ask you to take on work, and you're going to be like, oh boy, here's another one, and another one, and another one. And I won't even get into, the work more with less and do more with less and all of that that's been going on and on and on and on. So here's a couple things to consider. Number one, your boss doesn't keep track of how much work he or she gives you. So if you have that mindset of, well, I can't believe that she just asked me to do one more thing. Doesn't she know how much she's given me already? I'll make this real easy for you. She doesn't. So I would not even go into that mind game of how dare she, doesn't she respect me, da-da-da-da-da. Your boss has other priorities than keeping track of how much work that he or she is giving you. I hope we're clear on that. Because that's just a self-beat-up game that you're playing with yourself, and it's not reality. So here's the deal. If you are asked to take on another project, another task, and you simply know that you are already filled to the brim with things that need to be done, then once you go through the no and you say, no, I'd really like to take that on. However, I've got this, and this going on, and, maybe so-and-so might be able to help, and your boss says, tough. You're the one that's doing it. Ooh, okay, well, the 3 steps to saying no didn't work. Well, then this is the opportunity where you need to ask for help. And you ask for help by going to your boss and you say, you know what, boss, this is what I got. I got this, I got this, I got this. This is due today, this is due tomorrow, this is due Friday, and you're asking me to take on this. I need help in prioritizing. I need you to tell me what needs to be done first, what needs to be done second, what needs to be done third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, because the truth is, I've got all of this going on, and I really need some help on just figuring out what's first and what I need to do. Now, 2 things are possibly going to happen when you ask for this help. Both have happened to me, so I will share them with you. Number 1 is your boss will look at that list, and your boss will say something along the lines of, I had no idea I'd given you this much to do. And then they may go into, I really need to have this done, so maybe I can get that off your plate and give that to someone else. I've had that happen. I've had the boss say, you know what, there's really no one else you can delegate that to, so let's work with your list here of what your priority is going to be. I need you to take on this task. So this one is now first, this one is now second, and I understand that maybe if you don't get this one done, that's due on Friday, but I need you to check in with me and let me know the status of that. Okay, great. You may get this. And I had this happen with me as well, and it told me a lot about the relationship that I had with my boss. Once again went through my 3 steps, and the boss said, yeah, well, that's great, but I need you to do this. And I said, okay, then here's the list. What should I do first? What should I do second? What should I do third? And my boss looked at me and said, not my problem, figure it out yourself. Okay. Well, I knew where I stood, and I also knew what I knew where support wasn't going to come from, if that made sense. So the first thing I'm going to challenge you to do, and this goes back to Covey and his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is every day you need to make sure that you have a to-do list, and you need to make sure that you understand what are the priorities. And what I recommend that you do with your to-do list is that once you have written out your list, that you then give it the level of importance for each item. So this one is number 1, this one is number 2, this one is number 3. This is the order that I'm going to accomplish these things. Remember that a to-do list without prioritizing is likely going to be a to-do list where you do things you want to do, things you like to do, not necessarily the things that need to be done first or second or third. The reason that I want you to do this is that when you have that list and you have the priorities, if you have someone who comes to you and they ask you to take on a task, then number 1, you've already got that right in front of you. You can say, you know what, I've got this going on, I've got this going on, I've got this going on, so I'm going to have to say no, or I'm going to have to decline in taking that on. Or maybe you'll say, hey, you know what, my schedule clears out a little later in the week. So if it's something that maybe on Thursday or Friday, then that could be something I may be able to help you with later. So this sets the foundation to help you to say no, to say maybe later, to say let me sleep on it. Maybe you look at that list and you're saying, you know what, if I get this done today, then I may be able to help with that tomorrow. So see this as your foundational tool. And go back to what I mentioned before. Saying yes to something means saying no to something else. Now, also in that conversation, when you're asking for help in prioritizing, you may say to your boss, is there anyone that if you need me to take on this task, is there anyone else that could help me with number 2 on my list or number 3 on my list and what's going on? I had a huge fear of saying no to my boss. And you know what? I had to get over it. Simply because, as I mentioned before, my boss didn't keep track of everything that was being delegated to me. So, if I keep saying yes, the boss is going to assume that that means that I can handle it and that everything's under control. Do your to-do list, prioritize it, know what are the items that are important, know what the items are that are urgent. If you need to go back and read Covey's First Thing First, I would highly recommend it. It's a great tool. There are a lot of them out there, but I would suggest that's a good one for you to consider. All right, some other helpful tips here and different things that I want you to just consider here as you are getting more comfortable with saying no to other people. Number 1 on the list is actually, I recommend practice. And I know that sounds kind of funny and maybe a little bit strange, you need to build up a level of comfort. You need to build up a level of comfort in saying no. I firmly recommend those 3 steps. No, why, alternatives. The good news is you can practice this even outside of work. Maybe you have a Reverend Allen in your life, or maybe you have a friend who needs you to do something. Oh, we're moving on Saturday, and I know that you're really good at packing and moving, Andrew. I really need your help. Well, I'd love to help my friends. The truth is, Saturday my daughter's in town, and it's her interview for vet school at the University of Tennessee, and the answer is no. So I may be the greatest packer in the world, but you know what? That's not a priority for me. So you're going to have opportunities to practice no. That will build your confidence. That will help you to feel better about it. And I love this graphic because this whole thing of practice makes perfect is blah to me. Blah, ew, just get that away from me. But practice does make progress. I think if your goal is perfection, you may find a lot of disappointment in life. Improvement, progress, those are good things. So look for ways to practice. And don't do what I went to I don't remember what the workshop was anymore because quite frankly I was like whatever. So it was an assertive communications class, and one of the things that the instructor wanted us to do was to practice saying no to our partner in the classroom. And so whatever this person that I was partnered up with, whatever they asked, I was to say no. Well, that was kind of fun because the person that I was with was like saying, take me to Disney World, crazy stuff like that. But was it really applicable in real life? Yeah, I kind of lean toward no on that. So make it real and just don't look in the mirror and say no. I think that was another thing they wanted us to do. And I was like, okay. Applicable, please. All right, apologies. Now, if you are truly sorry that you can't help them, then great. Okay, I don't think necessarily you need to be sorry, though. If taking charge of yourself and protecting yourself, protecting your schedule, protecting your mental health, if taking charge and understanding that saying yes means you're saying no to something else that's really important, well, then I'm not sure an apology is needed. And here's another thing to consider. Many people believe that if you start with I'm sorry, they believe that they're being polite. On the receiving end, however, whenever you start with I'm sorry or with a polite statement, many people actually believe that it makes you sound weak. So consider that. This one goes back to you have to find your level of comfort in how you want to deliver your no. So if you feel like you need to have an apology, then by all means do it. I just don't want you to think that an apology is required. Once again, some people think that if you are not apologetic about guarding your time, that actually is going to be a more firm response in how you communicate with them. Ooh, this one's so hard for me. Because I like being nice. Do you guys like being nice? Give me a yes or a no. Don't you like being, I like being nice. Because to me, being nice is part of building relationships. And yet I'm going to challenge you to watch how nice you are. If you keep saying yes, yes, and yes, and then you go home and you just had a meltdown, might need to look at that. Just a reminder that if you are saying yes to others, be careful that you are not saying no to yourself. So let's be clear. I'm not saying don't be polite. Actually, I'm saying, yes, be polite. I'm just being careful here and saying that if you keep on being nice to others and you're not taking care of yourself, then we have a bigger problem in what's going on. And by the way, people will know you're an easy target. They will. Oh, I'm sure. I bet that if I could have heard some of these conversations years ago, it would have been, oh, Andrew always says yes. Just go ahead and ask him. I'm sure he'll help you. Because Andrew always did say yes. Well, Andrew learned that you can be nice and you can say no at the same time. So guarding my time, guarding my mental health, so I'm not beating myself up, takes on a priority. And there are times that I understand that I may disappoint people, and it may even upset them, although I could go into a totally different way of looking at this and tell you that I don't upset people. They choose to be upset, but that's another conversation for another day and what's going on. I want to make clear. You don't have to be nice. Be polite. Be firm. Deliver the 3 steps. And I think you're going to find you're going to feel much more comfortable about it. Saying no in person to me is important. It can be easy to say no on the phone. It can be easy to say no in an email because, well, that's not quite as personal. Yet I'm going to tell you that email messages are easily misunderstood. In person, the message is going to be pretty clear. I put up there the research from Dr. Albert Merabi, and it's something that I like to share a lot in my communication programs, where he looked at the overall elements of personal communication. 7, 38, and 55 are the big numbers here that we look at. So 7% is words, which tells you really need to pay attention to your voice and your tone. If you sound timid, if you sound weak, if you're not sounding firm, it's going to have an impact on the message you deliver. And then what's your body language saying as well? Is half your body out the door? Well, I'll probably notice that when you're saying no. I really did enjoy this book on how to say no without feeling guilty. I'm not sure if it's in your collection. It might be something to check out, though. There, I think, were a couple of good tips in there, actually a couple that I have shared with you. And here's one that I really found impactful from the book, and that is keep it short and sweet. You don't need to lay out your entire calendar. Because if you do, you know what's going to happen? Tell me in the discussion area. If you lay out your entire calendar and you say, well, I've got this on Tuesday at 10, I've got this on Wednesday at 3, I've got this on Thursday at 1, I've got this, and this. What is the person you're talking to going to do? See, some people are typing in here. Because I know what they're going to do because they've done it to me. So let's see what you guys come up with. Sure, they'll find a time. Or they'll say, oh, well, my project is much more important than that one that you're doing on Tuesday. So no, you don't need to give them the entire calendar. I've got a busy week. Or you know what? My daughter's in town on Saturday. That's it. End of story. And have you considered an alternative? Remember, I love alternatives. I think you're going to find alternatives to be your friend. Keep it short and sweet. Don't defend is the other thing. Don't defend. There's a quote that I love from the Buddha that says that the moment you begin to defend is the moment you show your weakness. I don't know why I love that so much, but I do. So you don't need to defend yourself for saying no. If you do, people are going to start to poke holes in your defense. So step 1, step 2, step 3, see how the boss, see how the coworker responds, and then see where you need to go from there. But you do not need to give detail upon detail upon detail. That's just not important, and it's not necessary. All right, let's look at this one. What's one thing that you learned today in the program that you think you can immediately use? What's one thing that you learned in the program that you think you can immediately use? Let's start there. And we'll take a look at some of your answers here. So we've got finding a time for you to say yes. The 3 steps. You don't have to be apologetic. Yeah, but that was a hard one for me because I kind of felt bad, right? So it's like, but I don't need to. All of the steps. Alternatives, making the to-do list. Oh, good. Asking help for prioritizing. That was a big takeaway for me. And as I mentioned earlier, it also told me a lot about the relationship that I had with my boss with that. Or, or a coworker even, if that's the case. I'll let you know tomorrow to judge the sense of urgency. With that, let's see. Saying no, then telling them why. Asking for help as well. Good on that. A couple more typing in. And by the way, we do have time for any questions here. If there's anything you'd like to put out there that we can talk about, please take a moment here and type that in. And we can look at maybe something in particular you might have going on. Remember, no names will be used. So we're good there. Let's see, better. Asking for prioritizing, good. What if you are the only person your boss supervises? Well, odds are you're going to be the one that's going to get the delegations, right? I still think it goes back to you need to let your boss know what workload it is that you have. And it may get into, even if you're the only person that your boss supervises, are there outside resources that may be available for you guys? Maybe yes, maybe no. Don't know the workplace. I guess the question I would ask you right now is, what are you doing now that's not working? Because that tells me that a different approach is needed. You're probably feeling like you just need to say yes because you're the only person that's going on. That is being supervised. So I would look at making sure that they know what the workload is. I would look at saying, here's the list. Maybe I need help with prioritizing. Maybe they aren't aware of how much is going your way. And I see that we've got some other responses coming in here as well. So once again, any questions or comments? And I'm going to ask you a number scale here while I'm looking at some of these other ones coming in. Just give me on a scale of 1 to 5, how comfortable would you be using the 3 steps that I talked about today? 1, not very comfortable. 3, some comfort there. 5 would be you think you could do it right away. Where would you be on that 1 to 5 scale? Because to me, this is about learning a skill, and then it's going out and practicing it. 4s are pretty good, gang. 4s are pretty good. I think the key here is make sure that you have the information that you need, whether it's your to-do list, whatever that is, so that when the question comes your way or when the ask comes your way, that you feel comfortable with what you're going to say in number 2. And then number 3 usually comes to me while I'm going through number 2, because I may ask them what other resources, and I may make that collaborative in what's going on. Okay, communication is not the best, and guilt tripping and using your performance review against you. Yeah. Okay, I get that. That's called they call it bullying in this context. And so the bullying is, it's your performance review, I, in your situation, would recommend look at what is it that you can do with this supervisor when it comes to just, here's everything you've asked me to do, help me to prioritize. Here are the things that we have going on. and see if there is any additional help or resources that this person can offer you with that. That's a hard one, and it may have you thinking about what some of your next steps may be with how you want to handle that situation. All right, Ann, I don't see any other questions,
But you never
so
know.
I think we'll see what else is coming in, but we'll bring you in as well.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. I hope everybody understands how to say no now, if they need to do
I
that.
think I think we understand it. It's more doing it. How's that?
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's funny in my situation where I haven't had a boss in a long time, or someone. It's different though because I answer to a couple different boards, and I have to say no to them sometimes. So, but
But
that's
you do have bosses, Ann.
yeah. Well, the boards are more of a
Right.
they're more of a negotiation than a yes and no. I think so.
Okay. Right. And that's another thing to consider. In saying no, that may open negotiation.
Right, right. And sometimes
As
it's
you're
not no. It's convincing them that they're what they're doing is not a good idea,
right.
which is completely
And
different.
that's
But you could work with a
yeah.
boss too. Sometimes your boss might want you to do something that's not really appropriate
Mm-hmm.
because they don't understand. So,
Very good.
all right. I don't see any other questions come in. So, Andrew, thank you for putting this together. I think it's an excellent presentation. I think everyone enjoyed it. We had a lot of participation, which we like. And I want to thank you all for attending. And we'll see you again soon in another PCI webinar. Have a great afternoon, everybody.